Does your pool pump make this sound when you turn it on? If so, it may be time for a new motor. We're going to show you how that's done in the upcoming video. So first things first, I want to talk a little bit about safety. I want to make sure that the power is disconnected inside and the breaker is turned off. Also, I've checked to make sure there's no power on any of the lines. If for any reason you're uncomfortable working with electric, highly recommended to hire a professional for this job. Since this pump is in a tight spot, the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to remove the motor and the motor plate from the front housing. Doing that with a 9/16 power tool. And shortly those bolts will be out and we'll be able to pull the motor out where we can work on it more efficiently. In this case, we're also going to cut the bond wire as close as we can to the pump because we'll need to reattach that to the new pump. Gently pull the motor out, let the water drain, and bring it to a better location to work on it. Next step's going to be disconnecting the electric from the back of the motor. Loosen the screws and remove the back cover plate so we can access the electrical connections. Got a couple ants in there, so it's a little more difficult. Okay, so very important, now that we have the back of the pump off, what we want to do is we want to note what voltage it was wired for so we can put the new one back the same way. In this case, the pump is wired for 230 volts, so we're going to make sure that the new one goes in the same way. Next step, I'm going to remove the wires, the conduit, and then prep the connections to go onto the new motor. Take off all three wires. The green one here, that is the grounding connection. Now loosen the nut on the conduit and take that off. Walter's getting bit by ants. Okay, now this part could be a little bit difficult, but what we're going to do is we're going to gently pull the wires through the conduit and out the bottom. Sometimes the connectors can make it a little bit tough. There we go. Okay, so got our three wires here. We've got our, it's not focusing. We got our two hot leads, we've got our ground, and we've got the motor pretty much disconnected. Now what we need to do, all these parts down here, these need to be put on the new motor. While we're in there, we're also going to change the pump seal. So now we're going to get to work removing the impeller. So what we've done, we've slipped a 17 or 7/16 inch wrench around the shaft in the back. It goes behind the switch. A little tricky to get in there, but we got it in. And next thing we're going to do is spin the impeller off. It should come off by hand. Sometimes it takes a little more persuasion. Now, there's the impeller. And then we're going to pull off this plate. And our next step, we'll pull that wrench off the back there. We're going to take these 4 bolts out here. This is the motor plate, and attach them to the new motor. We've removed these 3 parts here. We've got the motor plate, seal plate, and here we've got the impeller. Now we are going to change this seal later on here, but for now, first things first, let's get this motor plate on the new motor. And take it, place it on here, line up the holes, and very important, there's a little slot right here. that's known as the weep hole. Make sure that's on the bottom of the motor. That's designed so if the pump seal should fail, you don't flood your motor out. All right, Walt, grab the bolts and put them in. There's two parts to the pump seal. Over here we've got the ceramic portion that goes inside the seal plate, and on the impeller we've got this spring-loaded piece with friction surface on here. So what we're going to do, Walter's going to remove this part first. Okay, so actually a piece stayed on there. We've got to get it all off. Go ahead and grab the pliers and pull that piece off of there. A little rotational help. That's it, and then pull off that rubber washer as well. Might need to even grab that with the pliers. Sometimes they get stuck on there. Okay, now clean that shaft up. Once you get that rubber piece off, take the rag, really clean that up. Sometimes we take a little bit of fine wire or steel wool and even clean it more, but this one's not too bad. And the next thing we're going to do, we're going to put this on. Now you don't want to put any lubricant on it. You just want to put this on so this friction surface is facing out. Ready? There we go. New seal seated on. It's right here up against the impeller. Now we're going to move on to this one here. Now go ahead and pop out that ceramic piece from the back. Sometimes a screwdriver's easier. Take that, just give it a little tap. All right, see what you got. All right, and the whole thing is out, rubber and all. Now you're going to just press this new one in there. Take that and just press it into the groove there. Should go in pretty easily on a super pump. Seal's in. You want to make sure it's flat in there securely. So next thing we're going to do, put this onto the pump here. Again, see this slot? Okay, that's to allow water to leak out should the pump seal fail. So we want to make sure that when we put this on here, it's facing the bottom, just like the other one. That should go on there snugly. And then the last step, take this impeller here, just spin that on. And you shouldn't really have to tighten it, because when the motor comes on, it'll tighten itself because of the direction of rotation. So, now we've got our parts together, back on the motor. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to hook the electric back up. And then we're going to put this back into the pump. We've taken the back off the new motor, and one thing we definitely want to check here is make sure the voltage is set right. Okay, this one's 230, that's what the old one was. Want to make sure that we set that correctly. All right, now we're going to put the wiring back, put the conduit in, and get back to you. Reconnect the wires. First one we're going to put on is the ground. Yeah, once that's tight, we're going to connect the two hot wires. So one of them is going to go onto this terminal. And yeah, you're blocking my view. Okay, I got it here. Other one's going to go on the other terminal. Good, they have a nice snug fit. All right, both wires are on there good. Got our ground on. Now we're gonna put the back plate on, and we're just gonna test the motor out. Go ahead and put that back on. Gone back inside the house, turn the power back on. We're gonna test it. The new motor sounds great, so I'm gonna get to reassembling everything else. One part I didn't mention before, because it stayed inside the pump, is a diffuser. That's this piece right here. It also has a gasket on it, and as you can see, my phone will focus, it's marked top. So you want to make sure, just like all the other parts, that this is put on and the top is on the top. There we go, goes right into these slots here. All right, I'm going to give Walter a hand, and we're going to stick that motor back inside the pump housing. Small detail, before we put this in, there's a gasket that goes around here called the housing gasket, that real thin gasket. In this case, we've actually changed it, put a new one in. That's something you want to check. Usually it stays in the pump housing, but if it doesn't, you want to make sure it's seated in there correctly. All right, Walter, go ahead and put the motor in. Actually going to tighten them all evenly. So we're not going to go all the way. We're going to get them all started, and then after that we can send them home. All right, after that, we usually check them by hand. Here's a 9/16. Just go over them, check them. You don't want them too tight, but you want them snug enough that that won't leak. Last steps, but very, very important. This wire right here, this is the bond wire, and this needs to be reattached. This one has a little different style than the old motor, but essentially this wire has to go under here and then snug that down good. There we go. All right, on securely. All right, our pump's installed. I'm gonna prime it and start it up. So there we have it. New motor's installed, purring like a kitten. System's running great.